podcast. So we're excited to get this thing started. We're here to push ourselves to be self-disciplined or die, right?
Pretty much, yeah. It's gonna go bad. Some of these things we're gonna have to do, man. You guys are gonna think we're crazy by the time we finish, but it'll be pretty good. It'll be dope. What do you have for us today, Mark?
All right. Well, today we're going to talk about just getting self-disciplined and why we should get self-disciplined. So I've got my son Isaac here and my intern Brooks, and we've got Andy over here controlling the sound. And so what this podcast, well, let's just talk about why we started the podcast. We want to start the podcast because we wanted to push ourselves to become self-disciplined, right?
Yes, we want to push ourselves to be self-disciplined because it seems like the world today just isn't self-disciplined whatsoever. They just can't handle something different.
Yeah. Plus, there's just the huge benefits of becoming a self-disciplined person. So, a lot of people like to watch YouTube videos. That's one of my favorite ones, where somebody tries something for 30 days, like 100 push-ups a day, or like 500 sit-ups a day, or something like that, and then you just watch their results. Well, that's what we wanted to do, the same thing, only in a podcast form, where we push ourselves in spiritual disciplines and give ourselves really hard challenges, and then people can join in or they can just watch us try.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, what did we do last week?
Cold showers.
We did cold showers. How'd you do on that one, Isaac?
I took the cold shower, but I did it with a broken thumb, so I had to have a bag over my hand for the first few days. So it took twice as long.
Of course.
That was up there with the worst experiences of my life.
How was yours, Mark?
It wasn't that bad.
No,
I didn't think it was that bad. I always get a lot of reaction when I tell people that I try to take a cold shower. They're always like, "Why?" And it's like, because it's hard. That's why. Because that's what discipline is. You make yourself do things that are unenjoyable in order to push yourself to get used to being uncomfortable.
To complete the task of whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah. So we've done a lot of these things. So you just completed one where you eliminated most of your technology for a month.
Almost all of it, yeah.
Yeah.
That was hard, and I completed it. I finished it. Wait, what is it? Hold on. I completed it yesterday.
Right.
And it was awesome. It was really hard, but it really made you look at the world in a very happy manner. Nothing was horrible anymore.
Right. All right. So here's our goal today. So we're going to look at 1 Timothy 4:7, where Paul tells Timothy, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. So there is in that a lot of promise, but it's just another one of these instructions we find in the Bible that people are like, yeah, that's a good idea, but that's where we leave it, as a good idea. But our goal over this podcast is to actually take that seriously.
We're going to do it. I mean, it's pretty much, this is basically it. It's going to be funny to hear people have to want to do this with us.
Yeah.
Because I know this is going to be terrible.
I don't know. I don't know if anybody's going to do it with us, to tell you the truth. But we'll see. Why discipline? So I think that most of the people you respect often you respect them because they're self-disciplined.
That is true, actually.
Yeah, that's pretty true.
It's like if a dude's got, dude's big old strong guy, he's self-disciplined enough to work out all the time.
Or an athlete.
That is true.
Some of these athletes, it's just maybe you don't realize how hard it is until you try to do it yourself. But to be that good, I would say that most of the people I respect, if you boil it down, one of the big reasons why I respect them is because they are self-disciplined. And one of the biggest reasons I don't respect people is because they're not disciplined.
So it's kind of ridiculous. Some people do things that are they know they're doing something wrong, right? But they just don't know how to correct it. They're not disciplined enough to correct it. So yeah. I guess you have to work on yourself in other ways to be able to beat whatever challenge you're working on. If it's if you're addicted to smoking and you're trying to stop smoking, for instance, the way you're going to have to beat it is by either, I don't know, stopping completely or trying to find some other way to fulfill that, I don't know, hole that you're missing, I guess.
I just see that one of the big gripes that people have when they complain about other people is largely because they don't discipline themselves.
That's pretty bad.
Well, one of the things is that one of the things that discipline does is it enlivens your potential, right?
Yeah.
And when you think, so you think of somebody your age. So the guys I got here with me are 17, but like a 17-year-old has a lot of potential.
We're young. We can still we can perfect ourselves earlier.
Yeah, but one of the things that irritates people about 17-year-olds more than anything is that they waste their potential.
I think that we waste our potential because we believe we can do anything we want.
Well, you can believe you can do anything you want, but without self-discipline, you can't get anywhere. So when you see a 17-year-old guy who lacks self-discipline, who's weak, it's irritating because you see that he's wasting his potential, right?
It is the truth.
Yeah.
That is true. I just sometimes, when people come to me with a complaint, or not even a complaint, a problem, okay? Someone comes to you with a problem. And you know how to solve their problem, but it's almost like they're just not confident enough to solve their own problem. So I feel like this is you kind of have the best way to be able to solve it.
All right, so Paul actually gives the instruction to train yourself to be godly, which is to say, train yourself to be like God. Now, when you think about discipline, you usually think about trying to do things that are uncomfortable or being better on staying on task or getting things done or things like that. When it comes to a lot of areas of discipline, whether it be... Are we crapping out here? All right. So Paul talks about training yourself to be godly, which is discipline. When you think about discipline, you usually think of something physical or mental or something like that. There's a lot of things that you're going to have a natural talent for. Not everybody can be a sprinter. Not everybody can be a basketball player. Not everybody can be Elon Musk, right?
That's true, yes.
So
that man's crazy.
Everybody has like a natural talent towards certain things, whether it be intelligence or athleticism or like being artistic or musical or something like that. Like in those areas, no matter how hard you try, somebody else could just naturally be better.
Yeah.
That's true.
But
That's definitely true.
when it comes to spiritual things, there is nobody who has a natural talent or who is naturally more talented at spiritual things than another person. So everybody starts at an even playing field. So when you think about that, there's no such thing as somebody who just is naturally more spiritual. The only way you get to be godly is by training yourself, by discipline.
That is true. Even though people are like, I'm a Christ believer, I believe in Christ, they don't ever do the tasks that he's requested that a Christ follower do.
Exactly. So no discipline, no godliness. So you really just need to take away the excuse. You know, whenever somebody talks about discipline, somebody can just easily kind of brush it off and be like, "Well, I don't know. I'm just not built for that." And it's just like, well, sorry, this is the path. This is the path towards godliness. Yeah. Well, it's not the path towards salvation. You're not saved by hard work.
Good works.
You're not saved by good works. You're not saved by being more self-disciplined than somebody else. So you're not saved by it, but you do become godly by training yourself and by self-discipline.
I feel like that's what makes Christianity an even playing field for all. It doesn't matter what your background is. You have the same potential as someone else. You just have to fulfill it. It can't be that difficult to just fulfill what seems to be simple task.
Yeah. I'd say that whatever you put into Christianity, you're going to get out. But, I mean, the less you discipline yourself, the more you stray away from God. And I would almost say that that's the reason why so many people walk away, is because they don't discipline themselves in their faith, and then they just fade.
They just don't stay consistent.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Undisciplined Christians, I think, are a huge issue today that we don't address.
That's true.
There's a verse in Philippians 3:19 where he talks about their God is their belly, talking about people who fall into immorality. So they're controlled by their belly. In other words, by what you want. So it's like just 10 minutes ago, we walked past a big jar of cheese balls, and we all reached in and grabbed like a whole handful because they're like crack, you know. It's like try to walk by that thing without reaching in there and grabbing a whole handful, you know. Your belly just screams, "Give me those." That's what he means there by their God is their belly. They're controlled by their desires, which is to say, you either tell your body what to do, or it will control you. It will tell you what to do. So that a lot of people are giving into sin as temptation, largely because they have never built up the self-discipline to control themselves to fight against the temptation. The temptation's too strong, and they have no resistance.
It's basically like if you're trying to push a massive boulder up a hill, and the more you feed in that boulder, the bigger it's going to be.
Right.
So the more difficult it is to actually get the boulder over the hill.
Yeah, and you're weak anyway.
Pretty much.
Right. So what we want to do with discipline, training ourselves, is basically resistance training, is controlled stress, which is what we were trying to do with cold showers. We were teaching ourselves to put ourselves into an uncomfortable situation. There wasn't any real reward. It was just, can I tell my body to do something it doesn't want to do?
I mean, the only way you're going to get stronger in your faith is by defeating. It's like being able to separate your body and your spirit. So you have to beat the body down for it to obey you, so that the spirit may take over.
Yes. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9:27, I discipline my body and I keep it under control. Which he says, because if I don't, he says, I'll discredit myself. Which is to say, I'll preach about one thing, but I don't live it out. And, you know, look, I'm a preacher, and people look for hypocrisy in preachers and Christians, and I think that one of the biggest areas of hypocrisy is the lack of self-control and the lack of discipline.
Yeah, that is true. So, yeah, if you don't defeat your body, then you're not going to be able to complete your full tasks.
Same thing with physical training is a perfect example of just any form of discipline. You know, you've got to push your body to where you make it move, you make it do what you want, you make it sore, you make it hurt. And that first week of lifting weights, you feel like you're going to die because you're so sore and you do not want to go back out there and do it. But if you keep doing it, the reward starts to pay off. And that's the way it is with spiritual disciplines as well. You discipline yourself and eventually you begin to overcome. So a lot of people get in the mindset that the temptations they face, they'll never beat. You know, a lot of young guys are just completely addicted to pornography. They've given into it so many times, they've just given up on the chance of ever overcoming it because they lack self-control, they lack self-discipline, and it just beats them all the time. A disciplined person, though, is a force to be reckoned with. A disciplined person is a force to be reckoned with. Look, I remember telling this to a young man a couple years ago when I was talking about being fit, and you know, I do my best not to get the dad bod when I get a belly. And I was saying something about staying fit, and I said to him, if you take care of your body, people would treat you with more respect.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. That is completely true, bro. That's true. Actually, I've never thought about that. I think a lot of it comes from like a comfortableness. So, like when you get married, right? They call that the dad bod because they think you're like settled in your marriage, so there's no point in working to make yourself better anymore. So I feel like a lot of dads after that just kind of get chunky and they're like, it's no big deal, man. I'm good for life. And sometimes that's not necessarily the case.
Right. I think I found a couple of statistics the other day, and I didn't write them down because I couldn't verify them, but it was basically the average man cannot bench 100 pounds. He cannot deadlift over 135 pounds. He cannot do one single hanging pull-up, which is to say a pull-up where you don't start with your feet kicking up. Yeah. Just like you start from a hang. cannot do a single one. So if you can do those three things, you are already above average physically.
Dude. I mean, that is. I mean, I guess that's cool.
I mean, that statistic honestly shocks me, because like I'm not big or anything, you know. I'm still working out, trying to get bigger, but at my age, it's just kind of hard to get, you know, wide. But like that's surprising that an average guy can't do any of that, you know.
Wait, pause. An adult man?
An adult man.
An adult man can't do that.
Yeah.
I thought you get like dad's strength or something.
I don't know, but you just go around, you look, and you'll see that lack of discipline is. There's a book, I think I might have like Jerry Bridges, called Respectable Sins. Yeah, it's pretty cool because he goes through and he lists a bunch of sins that we don't call sins because they're respectable. In other words, you think of like, what are your big sins? Murder, hatred, drunkenness, adultery. Like those are, you commit those sins, nobody respects you. But there's a lot of sins that people commit all the time, but nobody points them out. Well, lack of self-control, lack of self-discipline, I think you can make a good case that it's a sin all of the time.
Yeah.
Now, you can make a case to say, well, I couldn't keep up with the discipline because, you know, life threw a curveball at me. I don't think anybody's going to hold that against you. But when you don't discipline yourself, you don't discipline your life, that's a sin. In fact, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, when Paul is talking about the requirements for an overseer or a pastor, one of the things is he talks about self-control is one of the biggest ones. And he says, if he cannot control his own family, how can he be in charge of the family of God? How can he be in charge of the church?
He can't.
He can't.
He's not strong enough
If he
yet.
can't discipline himself, how can he discipline anybody else? If he can't keep in line and discipline those who are immediately under his care, he shouldn't be put in charge of anybody else. And it's just one of those respectable sins that we don't call sins. We should.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. We should, but I mean, I don't.
But that's the point of our podcast. We're going to take it seriously. Like, we're going to discipline ourselves. We're going to learn self-discipline. And I think the fact that we're doing it together is probably...
It's more fun.
It's more fun.
I mean, that was kind of the basis. We were wanting to do this for fun. And
Right.
to, I guess, help. We were supposed to do it for fun and to help people. And I think having fun while doing it is pretty awesome. But
Yeah. Our only problem is this has become a contest between me and Brooks now, because he'll call me after he takes a cold shower and be like, well,
yeah,
I did
that's
it.
right.
have you done it yet?
Yeah. Hey, you gotta hype someone else up,
Just
too.
like you're doing everything in the shower now.
Dude, that's weird as crap. That's so weird. Why would you put it as that?
You told me that you were doing like all your
No.
your,
Okay.
like, skincare and stuff like
Dude,
that.
yeah, I was going through the whole thing, bro. I would like shave my face in the shower. I was making sure I took my time because like the more that I like, I don't know, the more that I was in there, the more I was like, yeah, rack up the time. This is supposed to be hard, yeah. And no, it became slowly easier as you did it. And I wanted to be like, yeah, that's right, yeah. Sorry, Mark.
Nice. All right, so let's go back to 1 Timothy 4:7. Discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. So let's talk about godliness for just a second. Godliness means God-likeness, which is to say to become like God. We need to define what we mean by godliness, because oftentimes we get this idea of godliness as being somebody who's just kind of pious, always soft-spoken. We have this kind of imaginary idea of what godliness is.
We need strong men.
But we don't usually associate godliness with somebody who is very self-disciplined, in which we should. Now you think about this. So when you think about, if you hear somebody talk about godliness and you say, what is the way to godliness? Like, how does a person become godly?
Through self-discipline.
But you don't usually think about self-discipline.
I guess that's true.
You might say, well, a person becomes godly by maybe reading their Bible. Okay, that is a discipline, but that's that's not everything. It's not. It's like almost like education is the way to godliness. In other words, what you need in order to be godly is you need to know more. You need to know more of the Bible, right?
So it's kind of like graduating school. You still need that PE class, right? So
Well, it's fine. Everybody does need to know more of the Bible, but that doesn't necessarily equate godliness, because there's a lot of people who know their Bible or know the Bible but aren't godly. And then I think there's another temptation to think that the path towards godliness is through some kind of religious experience. Like if you go to the right church and there's a really powerful speaker and it really moves you and the music is really good and the whole experience just makes you feel the presence of God, make you feel like that presence, that feel of worshipfulness, that if you can do that, that is somehow infusing godliness into you.
not necessarily.
But that's what I'm saying is these are the misunderstandings about the path towards godliness. So we usually think of what does a person need to do to be godly? We usually say, well, you need to go to church and you need to read your Bible.
Well, that's not just the whole deal.
Right.
If you can read your Bible all you want, but if you don't take into account for what it says, then you're wasting your time.
To many of us, God, the path to godliness is a mystery. We don't really know how you become godly. We think maybe it's through having more knowledge. Maybe it's through being more religious, having more experiences, or maybe it's just blind. God just has to kind of like blindly lead you blindly into a path of godliness. But the neat thing about 1 Timothy 4, when he says discipline yourself for the sake of godliness, is to say we know what the path to godliness is. It's through discipline, training yourself. And the nice thing about that is that means that door is open to everybody. In other words, you don't have to be naturally somebody who likes to read, or you need naturally be somebody who likes to go to church services in order to be godly. Anyone can be godly if they learn to discipline themselves towards godliness. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And not only that, it puts it in your control. If you have it in your head that godliness comes through some blind set of circumstances where you don't really know how you're becoming godly, it's just you're living your life and circumstances just magically lead you to godliness. And some people just magically happen to end up godly, but you don't know how. When you understand that that discipline is the path towards godliness, what that means is that's something in your control. Like you can control whether or not you're going to push yourself towards discipline. So, which is to say, godliness is not outside of your reach.
Okay. All right. I get what you're saying. I don't know. I would just make sure that whatever you're disciplining yourself for, I would make sure that it's a godly discipline, because people can discipline themselves to do anything, but if it's more difficult if you do it in a godly manner, because he designed it that way. It's like the path to heaven is narrow and the path to hell is huge. So
our goal is to be like God, with his characteristics as far as the ones that we actually should have: honesty, integrity, hard work, purity.
We'll never be able to like fully equate to God, but I guess we can try our best.
Yeah, but by degrees in comparison to who we are now or who we were, with the hard work, what can we become? It's like it really unlocks the possibilities and the potential that if we really did work ourselves through some of these things that we have listed here, of making purity our standard and being careful with the words we use and making the best use of the time and making sure we spend time every day in prayer, like compared to who we were, not necessarily compared to Christ, who is perfect, but even compared to who we were, the degree to which we have become godly, we have within our hands the potential to become a very godly man.
True, I guess that's true.
It's usually not a deal that you don't know what to do. It's that you lack the self-control to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it is true. I don't. Some things are harder to overcome than others, but
All right.
And make sure they're all on the same path.
Let's take a break from our sponsors.
The Bible and Barbells podcast is brought to you by the First Baptist Church of Herrin, Illinois. The First Baptist Church is a church seeking to be obedient to Christ and His Word, loving and serving one another and the community. We invite you to join us at 10:15 on Sunday mornings at 1500 South 13th Street or on our Facebook, First Baptist Church, Herrin.
All right, Mark, I've got a question for you because we kind of left off on something similar to this. Is playing God against His standards? Like,
Okay, so we're going to have to define what we mean by playing God.
okay, I don't know. I know he says that like all sins are equal, correct?
Okay?
Since he says that all sins are equal, then why is it that we feel that like murder is worse than lying?
Okay. Because some sins are worse.
What? Okay.
So we
then
can
why does he say that they're all even, or am I just being told this by someone? That
You're
doesn't
just being
make any
told
sense?
that. You're just being told that by somebody. So Jesus says, he says, woe to you, Bethsaida, and woe to you, Chorazin, because he says, if the works had been done in Sodom and Gomorrah that had been done in you. So Jesus did all of these like miracles in these towns called Bethsaida and Chorazin, right? He says, if I would have done these works in Sodom and Gomorrah, which is an Old Testament town that was guilty of homosexuality, and God sent down fire and brimstone and burned the whole things up, right? So he says, if I would have done these works in Sodom and Gomorrah, they would have repented. But he says, it will be worse for you on the day of judgment because you saw these works and you didn't believe. So there are degrees of judgment. So in the same way that today, you can get a traffic ticket, but that is not a high as of crime as murder, right? You're not going to be punished the same. There are degrees of sins. They're all sins. Even the smallest of sins is an affront to God. It's rebellion, and it shows that something is much deeper is the problem in your heart. But to just classify all sins as equal, to say, telling a white lie is just as bad as murder. Well, no, it isn't. No one believes that. Otherwise, we would put people to death for telling white lies. We're not going to do that.
I was gonna say because you're not gonna go to prison for a lie.
Right.
And
So
the only thing that happens if you have what's it called? No, not adultery. It is adultery when a wife cheats or a man cheats on a wife or a wife cheats on a man.
right.
Yes. So even though you do that, they don't necessarily send you to prison for that. They just kind of have a divorce and split everything. But
Even your wife treats you differently. So if your wife saw you looking at another woman, she would be mad. Okay. But it's not going to be the same degree as if you had committed adultery with that woman.
Yes.
Right. So it's not as to say that one is okay, but they're both not okay, but one is worse than the other. And so playing God, that's what you originally said, something about playing God.
You can't. You said earlier. You said we want to get closer to God, like to act like.
To act like God.
Yes. So it's not wrong to act like God.
No, we are to become godly. Godly means to be godlike, to be like God. That isn't to say that we're going to to be the judge and arbiter over other people. What it means by being godly is that we want to emulate God's character, whether it's honesty, love, compassion, courage. All of these things are parts of godliness that we want to emulate. We want to become like Christ. I mean, you're not going to become eternal. You're not going to become unchangeable. You're not become all powerful or anything like that. So it's not when we talk about godliness, we're not talking about taking on attributes of God that we cannot possibly take on.
Okay.
But we do want to become as God created us to be. God created us to be his representatives on the earth, to represent God on the earth. And that's what we want to be. We want to be his representatives. And so we have to accurately reflect who God is in this world.
I got you. Do you think by people becoming more godly that they are going to be disliked by ungodly people a lot stronger?
Maybe. It just depends. It depends on where you live and who you're around, I guess.
Okay, so like we're at school, right?
Right.
Okay, we could be at school, okay, and if we want to like speak our mind on something, like a topic, okay, it's like let's say homosexuality. We spoke our mind on homosexuality at our school. There are probably people at our school that are homo, so it's one of those things. Where it's like if you say it, majority of everyone will criticize you for it. Is that because God said that good is going to be bad and bad is going to be good?
Well, I think a lot of times with a Christian school, you have the assumption that just because you're going to a Christian school that you're a Christian.
No, yeah, there's
Yeah,
people in
definitely
there.
not.
Yeah, no. There's people in there that probably do worse than in a public school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's made worse for two reasons. One, you're under the assumption, being there puts you under the assumption that you are a Christian, number one. But it's also worse because you are under the influence of Christian teaching and preaching there. So not only are you doing those things, you're doing those things while actively rejecting the truth that's being taught to you.
Okay, so it's pretty much just teenager rebellion is what that comes from.
We hope so. We hope so.
We hope so.
We hope it's not more sinister than that, right?
But so I know some people that like as soon as they'll get out of the Christian school, right, they immediately run to bad, okay, because they just either they don't believe in it or they just don't care. So,
I would say that the fact that you're pushing yourself, you're disciplining yourself to be godly, just disciplining yourself you're going to get pushback on it anyway. Anytime you do something to better yourself, you are going to, without trying to, make other people feel bad about themselves.
You don't mean to. Even though you like hurt their feelings or whatever, you don't mean to
Right.
do that. So how do you prevent that?
If you can't.
Even if you try to encourage them and like, listen, this is so much fun and it helps you in such a good way. Would you just do this with us? And majority of the people are just like, no, I just can't do it. I just don't. Everybody can do that. But it's almost like and when you start doing good, then it seems like the world kind of falls apart around you and everyone leaves you because they're like, that guy, he's weird now. Or whatever the case may be.
Well, maybe they are. Galatians 5 talks about the fruit of the Spirit, and one of them is self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, all of them, and then one of them is self-control. So when you try to say, let's all take this discipline thing seriously, okay, they're not going to take it seriously if they're not really saved. If the Spirit really isn't there and they're not bearing the fruit of the Spirit, they're not going to jump towards self-control. It's not something that it's not in their heart to want. So you just kind of have to do it and set your aim in front of you, and some may be inspired by it and others may think that you're dumb. They're not going to like it, and that's fine. You just kind of have to take your haters.
Take your haters.
It's well, so I have here on my notes what happened to discipline. Like discipline, to say in a lot of areas, is not as prevalent today as it has been in the past. In R. Kent Hughes' book, The Disciplines of a Godly Man, he mentions a few, and I went ahead and went off a couple of them. The first one he actually mentions is feminism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no women in this podcast, which...
Well, there may be women listening to the podcast.
That is true. There may be women listening to the podcast. But, like, God... Okay, I don't know. I don't know how to, like... It's weird now, because, like, if I speak my mind, I feel, like, bad against it. So I think God didn't create us equal on purpose, but not, like, equal in different ways. So it's...
Well, it's not as though men have a hand on discipline that women don't. So let me just read you what this says. It says, during the 1970s, certain feminist strategists initiated the so-called girlhood project with the intent of effectively blurring or even erasing the distinction between males and females. According to the author and social critic Barbara Defoe Whitehead, feminists called for a new sexual standard based on traditional boyhood. In their plays and pursuits, little girls were made to be more like boys. And
What?
yeah, that's one of the things with feminism is that you'll notice that traditional femininity is looked down upon. And so girls are often taught to be competitive, to be tomboyish, whereas boys are often encouraged to be more feminine. Sit down in class, be quiet. And in fact, whenever a boy becomes aggressive, they're oftentimes pushed down upon that.
Oh, yeah.
And so the kind of discipline that you and I, that the three of us are talking about here, we're talking about a masculine discipline of self-control. And one of the things that we most often associate with manliness is to be a disciplined person. To be disciplined physically, to be disciplined in your money, to be disciplined in your time, all of it. One of the things that we almost always associate with masculinity is discipline. But if a culture has equated masculinity with being toxic, to say that when you try to become masculine or flex your masculine muscle or act manly in some way, that is toxic, we often put the two together. Discipline equals manliness, and manliness equals toxic. Therefore, discipline is also toxic. In other words, you becoming self-disciplined in their minds would be you're just trying to better yourself so that you can look down upon everybody else.
We're not trying to look down upon. We're trying to, like, even though it seems like you're trying to help people, they just don't care. They just don't want to hear it. It's because I think in their mind they know they're in the wrong, but they just suddenly decide, you know what, this is the way I am. I'm not going to change it for someone who thinks they're better than me. We don't think we're better. We just are trying to get everyone better with us.
Right. I have no concern here about putting down women. All right. I know every time I talk about this, there's always a bunch of people who just like, you're just trying to be sexist and put women back in the kitchen. I'm not talking about women at all. I'm talking about how God made men. Men are supposed to be disciplined. And when you blur those lines and when you discourage men from acting the way God created you to act, you're doing something really satanic.
Everyone gets confused.
Yes, it makes everybody confused. So here's what R. Kent Hughes says. Amid this cultural inversion, a rugged, assertive, and disciplined man is deemed a threat. If a guy lifts his head to take charge in a mixed-gender situation, he is labeled a chauvinist or a sexist pig. So a generation of men has been neutered and neutralized as to their natural ruggedness and willingness to undergo the disciplines that will turn them into real men. And Christian men are particularly susceptible to being cowed by the culture because discipline for godliness demands a particular toughness and rugged individuality in a castrating, God-denying culture. And that's very true. Part of being a self-disciplined man is you're going to go against the grain of a pretty feminized culture.
Okay.
That's what I'm pushing for.
I got you. Can I give you a hot topic real quick?
Maybe.
Okay, maybe. All right, here. So, Isaac, you'll have to give us your take here, but what do you think about a dress code? What's your take on a dress code? Why do you think that was put in place?
Just go somewhere that doesn't have a dress code and you'll find out.
I guess that's a pretty good point. Okay, so in Marion, did you hear about this? I don't think you did. At Marion School, they're like picketing, I guess, to have cat litter put in the bathroom.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, I know. It sounds ridiculous to us, but like to them, it seems normal. Is this like what you were saying, where how everyone's gonna get confused?
Oh yeah, when you constantly blur the lines, that's one of the things that you're going to find in Scripture. One of the things that God did at creation, if you notice, all He's doing is He's constantly separating things. He's creating division. So He separates the night from the day. He separates the land from the sea. He creates the animals, and then he divides them according to their kinds. And then he creates man. He specifically divides man from all of the rest of the creatures. And then he divides man into man and woman. So everything God does in creation is he's dividing things, making clear distinctions between things. There's a clear distinction between a tree and a flower and a kid, right? So what you find then now, the more that people move away from God, the more they blur those distinctions. So it's the same thing starts in Genesis 3 when Eve talks to the serpent, and the serpent begins to blur the distinctions. So God said, don't eat from the tree. And the first thing the serpent does is say, did he really say that? Which is to blur. Where is the line between right and wrong? And so the further a culture moves away from God, the more we blur all lines of right and wrong and distinctions the way God has made distinctions. And male and female is just one of those. And now it's like, I can remember being a kid, and some of today that we call the fundamentalists were like, oh, these old fundamentalist preachers, they were just scaremongers. But I can remember those old fundamentalist preachers saying that if you don't stop this now, and they started saying this is where it's going to go, and they were right.
They were right.
At first it
they
was.
know they're right now.
At first it was, well, if you allow people to be gay on TV, they're gonna be gay everywhere, and then they're gonna want a gay marriage. And no, they don't want gay marriage, right? Bill Clinton was president. He passed don't ask, don't tell.
What?
Yeah, don't ask, don't tell is a military policy that you could allow gays in the military as long as you didn't ask somebody if they were gay and they didn't tell you that they were gay. Don't ask, don't tell. Obama repeals that because we tried to warn people, if you go down this path, you just keep on going. And there was years ago people were warning, if you don't stop,
it's gonna go down this path.
You're gonna end up to a path of pedophilia, so that you're gonna make it legal to where adult men can date children, and that it's already here. It's out there on the web, and the same thing is true with this stupid stuff with cats. All right, you're pretending you're a cat. You're blurring the lines between human and animal at this point.
It's getting that out of hand. Right,
and so much of it is that there's no discipline, there's no control. The further you go away from God, the more chaotic and crazy it gets.
So I remember reading this. So God said that he was going to let people into their sexual sins.
Right.
Or not God. Or yeah, it was God said that.
You turn them over
to their sexual sins. So if they want to go down that road, they're welcome to. But that road is like the one that's like it's almost impossible to come back from.
Right. Your mind doesn't work anymore.
It's broken.
A reprobate mind, he calls it.
So you're older than us, okay? You're
right.
a little bit older than us.
I'm old.
You're not old, Mark. Okay. But, so you're older than us. So let's say 20 years ago, okay, was the world, in the most blunt terms, was the world this stupid?
Yeah, it was just as stupid, but you didn't have the internet platforms that you do today that people can broadcast it like they do now. So, even 50 years ago, you had weirdos, but they didn't have a platform
to show their mind,
to show it off. But it has clearly gotten worse. I mean, it's one thing to say that they're, the stuff that your shock jocks used to do to just try to get attention, or your celebrities the celebrities 30 years ago, the things that they did in order to get attention today, you couldn't even get attention. You're just one of many who are doing those kind of things. So
okay, so it was like when Kanye went up on stage and was like, "Yo, Taylor Swift's album is not as good as Rihanna's album."
Right. At this point, you're gonna have to go up and punch Taylor Swift in the face. It's kind of like Will Smith, the whole Will Smith thing. If you're gonna get attention,
Oh, oof. That was rough, wasn't it? Have you been watching this? What is it? It's the Johnny Depp
No.
and no, I don't remember what her name is.
I haven't watched. I don't even know who his wife is.
I've
heard people talk about it, but I'm not watching it.
They're in court now. I don't think it's his wife anymore. So now it's kind of turned into like, even if a man is like, if a man is not abusing a woman, and a woman is abusing a man, and she says, even though she says that, do you think that it is guilty until proven unguilty?
I don't know. I don't even know what I don't.
I ask these questions because these are the ones that like everyone's like. The men are like, yes, that's exactly how it is, and the women are like, no, that is not true at all.
I don't even know where they're going with all of it.
I have to ask these questions because I just, for future, people probably are always, we're on two separate lines here, so I want to ask your opinion and see what you think about it, because I don't know.
Well, I don't know anything about what the Johnny Depp thing is, because I have not been caught up on Johnny Depp.
So basically, okay, Johnny Depp supposedly was abusing his wife, okay?
Right, but now it turns out that she was the one abusing him.
Yes, is what it's looking like.
Okay.
I've only watched a few of the court cases, but it shows him being beat up pretty good by her, but then she doesn't have a defense. It seems like, so it's like her only defense is like what their phone calls or whatever, and it's like there's some people have been finding videos on the internet, right, of like him being uncomfortable around her, like at a constant flow. But I mean, so I don't know what edge to take here. But they stay like the whole internet's like, he sucks, he's terrible, but he's not even. No one knows if he did anything or not. There's no solid proof.
Yeah. Well, typically the man is physically abusive to the wife, not the other way around.
Yeah, I know. If so it's the other, I'm just...
when you have a pattern like that, then when their allegation is made, it's kind of like, well, that's typically the way it goes.
I guess that's true, but this day and age, there's some mean females out there, bro.
I guess that's just why you just kind of have to sit back and let the facts come out. All right, let's finish up our talk here about discipline.
Okay.
Then. So, we can just stop and just say there is a great need for discipline. Hopefully, we push ourselves in a way that we spare ourselves a lot of becoming like Johnny Depp or something like that. But
he's having a rough time.
You do find a lot of aimless guys out there. They don't know what they want to do with life. They don't know where to go. They're wasting their life without any kind of discipline or direction. We'll get into this when we talk about physical discipline. You're going to find out that testosterone levels in males is incredibly low. There's a huge testosterone problem right now. There's an obesity problem.
Oh, that's been happening since the 70s, right? When they made all those drinks bigger or whatever. Made all of our meals massive. We can just, but if nothing else, look, the church needs guys to be disciplined. What would happen? I mean, the typical church is something like 59% female, something like that. Oh, yeah. You told me that.
59 to 41% male-female ratio. And a lot of it, a lot of guys, when you start talking about self-discipline, they will listen up. Guys like Jordan Peterson, who have gotten really popular by telling guys to clean up their room and fix their life. Yeah. A lot of guys have jumped on that and said, I like this. It's something they can do. And we can add that into the church life as well. I mean, let me just ask this. What do you think it would be like if you created a church culture of self-discipline? Just within our church.
I feel like it would create way stronger men and leaders.
It would.
It would create leaders. We don't have those anymore. Like, guys at this point, if I can ask I can ask my brother and be like, hey, where do you want to go eat? And he's like, I don't know. And then we'll go pick someone. He's like, I don't like it here. And I'm like, well, I don't. What do you have to tell me?
Yeah. Well, one thing we could say is that if you created a culture of self-discipline, the inevitable result, I think the first result would be of happy families.
Yes. If you don't have a leader in your household, then there's not going to be.
That's one thing I've kind of learned is that in a family, whenever the husband and the father is either just not there a lot, or they just don't care. They just come in, they're to themselves, then they go to work and hang out with their buddies.
The family falls apart.
And that's the thing that I think we're seeing a lot today is that
everyone's
Their-
falling
their
apart.
kids, their sons, are just complete losers because of it.
Right. So, I mean, imagine walking into a church and you've got all of these very clearly self-disciplined people walking around. They're carrying a Bible. They're happy. They're serving. They're healthy. Like, they're physically healthy. I mean, imagine the difference that it would be to walk into an environment like that, where it's like, we're glad you're here, and then there's this kind of like expectation you're going to be pushed, like, to be better.
Everyone would know there's a pretty overarching power if they see everyone like this.
Yeah.
Right. I think you would have a better community.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have a better neighborhood. You'd have people taking care of other people. The benefits could be pretty big. You know, we kind of need to rethink our idea of godliness, instead of thinking of godliness as being something that's private and just personal. Godliness is something that comes through the path of discipline. So that's our goal. That's what we want to do with our podcast. We're going to be talking about different spiritual disciplines each week. Our goal is to record once a week. We would love to have your input, to invite you to join along with us. So I know that next week we're going to be talking about the discipline of the mind, and what we put into our minds and what we keep out of our minds. And so this past week we did a challenge where we made all of our showers, we had to take cold showers. This week, no sweets, right?
Oh, I thought we were doing that for a month.
Yeah, we're going to do it for a month, but we're going to do that
This week?
We're going to do that this week.
So, okay, do I need to clarify sweets for these people?
Yeah, clarify
Okay, cool.
sweets.
So, no soda, okay?
No soda.
I know people immediately are going to go, I just can't do that, it's impossible. But I know you guys can do it, it's not a big deal. But then, so it's like, no, I don't know, Little Debbie cakes, like stuff that are pretty obvious, okay?
Right.
Alright,
Right.
no Little Debbie cakes, no cookies, no cake. If you're going like to some sort of Dairy Queen thing, no ice cream. It's pretty, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
and we're
pretty
not going to go
basic.
crazy if we find out that there's an ingredient in our food that happens to have sugar in it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't care. But
Yeah.
we're not reaching out for the candy. We're not reaching for the cookies. We're not...
Oh, no potato chips. I was going to say no potato chips. Because
Oh.
I know people down potato chips. And
Right.
to be honest, those are terrible for you.
All right. Well, that's our goal, because we're going to be talking about what we put in our minds and what we keep out of our minds next week. So the
Ooh.
discipline of avoiding all of the sweets and the junk is what we're going to do this week. So we do want you to reach out to us. Our email is bibleandbarbellspodcast@gmail.com. So bibleandbarbellspodcast@gmail.com. And we thank you for joining us. We will be back again next week. And